Hello, everyone, and welcome to the MyBFF Business Leaders Podcast. I'm host Matt Gentili, and today we have some distinguished guests from the real estate space. We have Mark Johnson, who is the managing partner of Recruiting Insight, as well as Kyle Hunter, who is industry principal for Lone Wolf Technologies. Thank you both for being here. I appreciate you being guests on the show.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
Yeah, Matt, thanks for having us. Glad
yeah.
to be here.
So, I like to start off each show by asking our guests a personal question to give some insight into their background and personality. So, I'll start with you, Mark. Um, what was your first car?
What was my first car? I grew up in Colorado Springs under the foot of Pikes Peak, where actually America the Beautiful was written. And my first car was a Ford Maverick, the two-door coupe. And I drove that around Garden of the Gods and all the famous things you've heard about Colorado Springs. Probably a little bit about my personality, the Maverick.
How about you, Kyle?
Yeah, so my first car was actually split with my father, and he was a broker. And so or he had a brokerage in Central Florida, had a lot of land, so needed something that could go off-road a little bit. And so we decided on a Ford Explorer to share. So that was a nice benefit for me. I was one of the early SUV days, was able to bring a crowd with me wherever I
Yeah,
went.
yeah. Probably,
Yeah.
probably kept you safe in that too. Yeah.
So Kyle and I, we didn't know we had Ford. We had Ford as a common.
Oh yeah, there it
Yeah,
is.
there we go.
So today I brought you together to discuss the Q2 2026 agent migration and broker model performance report that was recently issued by Recruiting Insight, and MyBFF helps with the promotion of that. And we're fortunate enough to have Kyle and his team at Lone Wolf Technologies be the data partner on this report. And the report had some, really revelatory findings in it. And just kind of jumping into that, Mark, I'll ask you first. The report showed a sharp increase in agent mobility in Q1 2026. What do you think changed most in the mindset of agents to, reflect that change?
We know there's a number of things. We've done over 200 hours of exit interviews with agents who have left firms and where they've gone. And they've told us what they're looking for. They've told us they're looking for direction, which for us is leadership, vision, stability. They're looking for de-risking their business, broker support. They're looking for development, training, mentorship, cutting edge tools. I think in a flat to tough market, folks are always looking for what's best, what's next. And we'll get into some of the leading indicators of those that are looking for that. It's interesting that those who are moving are less productive than those who are staying. That tells us something. But what I really wanted to say here, Matt, what's really important about this report is the action plans at the end. We decided we didn't want to just do another report, but understanding the 8 Ds, understanding the 90-day action plan, understanding how to take this insight and do something with it is what we think makes this report different than any other.
And Kyle, from your perspective, what makes the data in this report kind of jump off the page and especially actionable for brokerage leaders?
Yeah, so when you are looking at the data, first off, it varies based on geography. And then there's other pieces as well, but that's one area that we looked at. There's things that are going on in the north that is different than the south and the west. And so understanding your own market is super important. And so when you're looking and diving into the data, you take a lot of the learnings from recruiting insights that Mark is teaching, and then you're applying that to your locality. And so I think, we hear all this noise. There's consolidations like crazy. Every time we open up Inman, something's going on, whether it's consolidation with MLSs, associations, brokerages, MLS is going national. So with all of this, there's so much that agents are, looking at, and brokerages have to figure out a way to attract agents and continue to pull them together. So I think that when you're looking at those trends, it's understanding what's happening and then looking at your value proposition and identifying what fits. Because to Mark's point, not all agents fit your brokerage. I think that there's, you really have to understand what works and hone in on that. And I think some of the data shows that, you have various moves from different types of brokerages, and sometimes they're sticking with their same business model. Sometimes it's a culture thing, and a lot of that is applying both the data to your local, your local knowledge to better understand what's going on.
And getting
And Matt, if
deeper.
I
Yeah.
could I play off
Yeah.
that for a minute?
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like every broker owner or recruiter or who's ever listening in to write this down as they think about this report. And I'm sure we'll tell them how to download the report. But this is not about agents. It's about you. Are agents choosing you or just settling for you, right? The data shows exactly who's moving, when they move, why they move, what their production is, what it looked like before and after. But the broker owners that I'm working with who are winning in this market um, are not winning on brand name or split structure alone. They know which agents to call, which conversations to have, and what to do in the first 90 days after. So my point is, while this is all about agents and brokerage performance, it's not. It's about you, the listener.
Yeah, you both mentioned brokerage performance, and I guess I'm always curious, where are you seeing which brokerage models are winning, which are losing, and why? I'm sure there's a lot of brokers out there that are, they're struggling with their recruiting. They're trying to understand, why aren't more agents coming into the pipeline, and why aren't more staying, and why are the ones that are leaving that are, mid to high producers, what's making them jump?
Oh, can I handle that one first and then
You
let
go
Kyle?
first, and then I'll go.
So, look, you'll see it in the report. We've cut this every way but Sunday. Yeah, there are some models that are getting hit harder than others. But within every single model type, there's winners and donors. We call them, I don't want to call them winners and losers. We call them winners and donors, right? Those who are donating to the industry versus, right? In every single model type, we find traditional models that are winning and traditional models that are donating. In some of the, whatever you want to call them, new age models or new market models, winners and losers. We actually looked at one of the models that everyone thinks is easy, and it's not, the flat fee model, and we found two winners and two losers, right? What it taught us when we did the exit interviews, it's all about execution. The people that are executing the disciplines and the required, what Kyle said, really understanding their niche, understanding their value proposition, understanding their ideal agent. When they get an understanding of that, they win regardless of model. Oh,
Yeah.
Kyle, thoughts?
Yeah, this one's a tricky one because I think that there's a variety of models that work. The key piece is understanding the model that you're going with, building a plan to that model, and then executing the strategy to make that model succeed. Whether, we have a whole gamut, and Lone Wolf, we're actually working on a profitability study with partnering with some brokerages that have difference to better identify that, because at the end of the day, you can see production, but if you're not looking at the GNL, are they actually making profitability? And so brokerages need to be profitable. And so there's a litany of a lot of different type models that can be successful. Your traditional models, generally your agents are paying more, but you're getting a lot more value. They tend to be higher producing agents. Your flat fee models, your no brick and mortar, a lot of times they're lower cost, but agents are low producing. There's a lot of brokerages that make money that where real estate is the loss leader, and they bank on their ancillary offering, so attach rates on their other, whether it be mortgage, title, insurance, you name it. And so, it really depends on what your profitability model is going to be and then execution. I think the other piece here is really boils down to culture and the individual relationships with the agents, from branch managers to the managing broker, and making sure they fit, because that sometimes can cause challenges. I was talking to a broker the other day, and they do an active, they call it re-recruiting, but basically they look at how the agent meshes with their branch managers, and sometimes they make the decision to recommend an agent, move to a different branch manager that might be a better fit with the way that that particular agent works, to keep them within the brokerage, even though they're switching, from office to office. And I think some of the report we looked at, Mark, talked about that interagency move as well, and seeing some trends there. But yeah, it's a great question, Matt, and I think it really boils down to understanding your business and where you're wanting to go, and then applying that, using the data and the tactics to keep your agents.
And I think
And
one of the,
if I could
yeah,
tag
go
team on
ahead.
that, Matt, if I could tag team on that, what we're measuring, and you'll see in the report, is what we call the efficiency ratio, right? Everyone's losing. Every single model has agents that leave. Every single model has agents that come. When a dollar goes out the door, are you bringing a dollar or more back in, or a dollar or less back in? And in the report, here are the brands that are trading up. Here's the models that are neutral, and here's the models that are what I call the brain drain. In the trading up area, more or less, they lose a dollar, but they bring $1.10 in, is every single model. The Northeast Regional Leader, the Cloud Disruptor, the Data Center Powerhouse, the Blue Chip Traditionalist are all trading up. The neutral one is kind of what I would call the training central incumbent. We'll talk about why we're masking these names here in a minute. In the brain drain, they lose a dollar, but they only bring in 75 cents, right? Every single model is represented. It comes back to execution. It comes back to value prop. It comes back to all the elements. There's winners and losers in every single model.
Yeah, I think that was one of the biggest things that surprised me about the findings in this particular report. It references 20% of the agents are consistently productive quarter over quarter. How should that change the way brokers think about recruiting and retention, in terms of the amount of emphasis and focus that they're putting on existing agents versus, continuously bringing in new?
Yeah, if I could I'm going to share my screen here just for a quick second. Can you see these slides?
Yep.
2 slides here. 1 in 5 agents are in the productive core. We now have, thanks to Kyle and his team, we can see 6 to 8 quarters of data. 20% of the agents, again, productive agents, these are agents with production, show up every single quarter. They're consistent producers. 80% of those in production, because we're only measuring people that actually produce and report, 80% come in and out of production almost every other quarter. We can predict this. So what's it mean to brokers? It's not really about head count, it's about production, right? And we can show you where the volume sits, where 56% of the movers are in this 1 to 4 million range. That's really the target of who's moving. Yeah, they're going to move at all levels, but that's the sweet spot of where the majority of folks are moving. So I don't know if I answered your question, but Kyle,
Yeah,
you may
I
have
think
more
so.
insight.
I feel that the key takeaway as I read through the data was how important the consistent producers are, and sometimes they're not getting the same, or the amount of love that they should be getting from their broker on whereas the broker's got his or her focus turned over here to bringing in new agents. Where you need to be focused on are the agents that are producing in-house.
Well, I would argue you have to do both,
Yeah.
and you can do both. If you can do both effectively. when you get your system structure and process right. It's just a discipline.
Yeah. Yeah. And, Matt, to your question, keeping agents, I was at a recruiting event earlier this year, and one of the exercises that, one of the coaches was discussing was that as a brokerage or a managing brokerage or a team lead, look at your top agent, look at your top two agents,
Mhm.
take them out, pretend like they're not there. Now look at your agent per agent productivity. That number there's a lot of times a huge delta in that. And you got to bake that in when you're looking at your full strategy of recruiting and retaining agents. Because, in many cases, those top agents are the ones that are, can be challenging and can be jumpy and can move. And so it's about making sure you're coaching those agents that are, performing and growing them and continuing that growth to kind of even out that productivity. Um, to de-risk. I mean, you're really de-risking the profitability of the brokerage because you are, helping improve those agents. To Mark's slide, there was the highest chunk there, that $1 to $4 million. If you think about that, $1 million, you're in volume, you're probably maybe trying to get into full time, or maybe you're full time, but you really need to do more production to get into a better movement. So identifying those agents that are increasing or looking for something, that's a good place to focus. But if you're also looking at your own agents that are in that production level, you need to be thinking about that same thing, because those agents could very well and probably are looking to someone else that's promising, hey, you're selling 1 million, we can get you to 2 million by next year. And so going back and identifying those within just helps you de-risk your agent population. And again, I love the term re-recruiting, because that's really what you're doing, is that you're recruiting in agents, but you got to continue re-recruiting, retaining, but re-recruiting and showing them the value of the brokerage, why they chose you in the first place, and how you're going to help them continue to grow.
Yeah, there were two brilliant things that Kyle brought up there about the data. One is when you remove those top two folks, you start to see the concentration risk, right? And if you're too concentrated in just a few producers, you're at much greater risk. The other thing throughout the report that Kyle brought up, we don't use averages because they get pulled up by these top producers, right? We use median. That's another way to do what Kyle said is, hey, we're looking at the median, not the average, because the average, it gets way out of whack. Because there's a few top producers that make those averages look really weird. So you'll see throughout the report we use median a lot, which is, half above, half below, right? Yeah.
And following up on that, I guess I would ask, the patterns that you're seeing on the brokerage side data today, where are they still relying too much on instinct, and what are the tools that they could and should be using to be able to measure, productivity and those sorts of things that are going to tell you which agent you need to focus on?
Can I show you the three mistakes all brokers are making today?
Yeah.
Three mistakes that they're making today is they create, number one, they recreate their recruiting list only from agents in a decline only. Our data shows that if you're only recruiting from a list of people that are in decline, you're missing 44% of the opportunity. So 44% of the agents who moved in our latest reports actually had a business that was flat or increasing. That may sound counterintuitive. So it's not just the people who were in a downfall that are moving. So that's mistake number one. Mistake number two is onboarding everyone using the same playbook. Some people, Matt, like you and I, may need to be onboarded and just left alone to do our thing. Others, particularly those that are in a little bit of a downfall, they need a 90-day action plan with weekly accountability and in their face accountability that you agree to as part of them coming over. And we can see in the data when those persons have that type of coaching and accountability, their business immediately turns around. If they don't, they stay in that same spiral. So recruiting from a decline only, mistake number one. Mistake number two, using the same onboarding playbook for everyone. And number three, we just talked about it, managing to headcount. 1 in 3 agents had zero production in the last quarter. They'll have production this quarter. They come in and out of production. We can help them with that, but headcount is not production. We track individual production and all the reports we do. And what makes this report unique and different, it's only production based.
Yeah.
We're not talking about any agents who moved who didn't have production, won't show up in any of our data. It's only people in production. This entire report is built around production.
And to Mark's point, the recruiting from decline, one thing you ask about tools, that's where Lone Wolf does come in. For an individual brokerage, you have broker metrics, which is a tool that Lone Wolf provides. And so, there's a lot of quick searches like suggested agents, and suggested agents will allow you to go in and say, okay, I'm looking at agents that have had a percentage of incline. You set the percentage, you set the time period, you set all of these things, but it helps you look at, you can use decreasing. So if that's something that you're doing, but if you're looking at increasing production, that's another important metric to Mark's point. You can also look at their listing productivity, because I think that's something that we mentioned and talked about in the past, where if you have an agent that's increasing production, but all of a sudden you start seeing their listings drop, that's a clear indicator that they're needing to wrap up some deals before they're looking to make a move. And so both, whether you're looking for agents to recruit or you're looking to prevent agents from leaving you, those are certainly triggers that you should be aware of and, and to take into account. And so those are good using a tool like Broker Metrics that help you quickly identify that. I'd say on top of that, I really like Mark's point about using the same playbook, because, not all agents are the same, and it varies. You can have an agent that's coming from a large franchise brokerage that have just been trained and trained and trained, and they have systems in place and they know what they're doing. And you have a different onboarding tactic for them. Maybe that's a higher level of accountability, but less about tactical, this is what you need to do, versus a newer agent that maybe was coming from a boutique that was just starting out. They kind of had a broker kind of handhold them and teach them what they knew, but there wasn't anything formal. And so you might put them into a more structured program where it's helping them grow and really helping them get the best out of the brokerage that you're training. So those are two great points, Mark, that I think that really can help across the board.
For sure. And Matt, probably your next logical question is who's most likely to move? And every quarter, the agent who's most likely to move is 2.4 million in median annual production. So the median is we're taking out that average, right? They're agents, not broker associates. Broker associates are in production. They don't move as much, but the agents do. And they're 43.2% listing ratio, more or less. They're buy-side agents. They do more buy-side business. If you're a broker who can teach them how to list, you're going to retain them more, because the listing agent typically doesn't move as much. Where we do see, and Kyle mentioned it, the listing agents who do move, in almost all cases, the prior quarter had a reduction in their percentage of listing ratio. More or less, if they were 70-30, 70 listings, 30 buyers last quarter, and they dropped to 60-40, that's a leading indicator almost every time. It's a direct correlation. They're going to move. So the data is right there. You can use broker metrics to find these things. And like we said earlier, 56% are in that 1 to 4 million range. That's the most likely to move person. And if this fits your profile, and these are people you can help, there's plenty of them out there that you and your recruiters and coaches and managers can help bring to the next level.
It's a really valuable snapshot. I'm always curious, because the data tells us there's not necessarily a recruiting advantage by what you would call traditional brokerages versus those that are running on flat fees or other models. Where are you seeing the trends that would give insight to one or the other in terms of, how do they make the best of the data that the report presents, and then what do they do with that data?
Well, if I understand your question, can I make one point first
Yeah.
before I forget? The other point is this. There's no seasonality. I mean, there is some seasonality here, but every single month agents move. So that's the first thing, Matt, to your question is everyone listening in ought to understand every single month agents move. Every single month. Yeah, there's some seasonality and peaks, but there's not a month where we don't see agents move. There's not a dead season. Later on in the report, to your question, I'm going to skip ahead here. I've got some slides, but to your question, how do we take action? In our exit interviews, in almost all cases, before they ever get to splits and money, they talk about absentee ownership. They talk about direction. They talk about my broker owner or my broker support person, I couldn't find them, right? When I needed them, when it mattered most, I couldn't get a hold of someone quick enough.
And that's regardless of model type.
Right. Regardless of model type. If I can't get a hold of my broker or whoever my support person is when I need them most, it's a fail. Matt, in my brokerage, I used to measure it. We had a standard of 60 minutes or less. If you reached out 60 minutes or less during the day and 120 minutes or less on a weekend. And it was reliable. I measured it every week. I was personally involved as CEO. I watched that metric. So direction, they would talk about de-risking. Hey, I feel my business is at risk, right? Training. Hey, there's a bunch of training, but it's not from my level. It's for these other people, right? Whether it's high level, low, entry level, is it targeted towards me or is it just generic training? Culture. So I would do, so first thing, Matt, to your thing, I would do an audit around our 8Ds. Where do we stand on leadership? Are we active? Are we the face of the firm? Are we helping our agents de-risk their business or make it more risky? Where they feel it, not what we perceive, but do they feel we got their back, right? And we do give you in the report a 90-day action plan. Assess the 8Ds, map your concentration risk to Kyle's point. Do you have 30% of your production concentrated in just a few agents? If you do, you want to deal with that because if they walk out the door, it's a game changer, right? Calculate your efficiency ratio. For every dollar you lose, are you bringing in $1 or more, or are you bringing in $1 or less? And if you're bringing in $1 or less, there's ways to fix that. Do like we do. Go and interview 10 people who left you. Hey, Matt, I know you left. I'm not trying to convince you to come back. I'm just trying to learn. What could we have done better, right? And then step 2, intervene, and step 3, execute. So we have an action plan and some insights that you can take all of this data and information and turn it into something meaningful. Matt, did that address your question?
Yeah, I think so. When we're looking at brand value proposition, regardless of model, these are action steps that the report gives you to address it. And I think that's what, every broker I talk to is asking for. It's one thing to read a report with a ton of data in it, but having action steps is very helpful.
Yeah. So that's one of the key things. That's what this report does differently. It gives you the data and the insight, but then it says, here's what you can do about it. And here's the insight. Yeah.
Yeah. Just 2 points I want to pick up on. One, Mark hit on something really big. When you not having a boilerplate onboarding, and I know he touched on that again, but the reason that's important, when you're looking at an agent that has been in the business for a long time and has a consistent level of production, they're going to have different needs than agents that are in different circumstances. And so having a standardized across the board, you're going to have those agents that are higher producing that are going to say, you know what, this is elementary to me. I already know this. This is not helping me. But then if you try to dial it up too high, you might have agents like, hey, this is over my head. I'm not, nearly there. And so, sometimes it makes sense to cut that up and break that into multiple, groups. And you have, maybe a starting group or this group of agents and another to make sure that you're hitting the things that they need to be successful and that they feel that are bringing value to them. And so I think that is a critical piece in this report to make sure you're understanding. And I think the other piece is just, you know what the agent's production is. And so, reinforcing the wins with them and really helping them understand how they can either stay with your brokerage and continue, again, back to the recruiting or retention, but also when you're bringing someone in, really understanding that agent is important to make them feel comfortable that, you're not just looking at numbers, but you understand more about them. And so helping them be comfortable, with your culture. And to Mark's point, following up, it's about leadership. And that's what we continue to hear is that, brokerages that are brokers or managers that are really connected with the agent and they feel they have a support system, they're a lot less likely to incline because they know that that's a value that they cherish. And so if you throw compensation out the window and all of these things, sure, maybe an extra percentage or some other things could be, bringing agents over there, but they're not going to start looking necessarily unless they see some sort of void, in the system that you have. So making sure you have that solid is a key element to both keeping your agents, but also bringing a culture that can, recruit agents from other brokerages.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it makes sense. Really, really good stuff, guys. I think anybody that's listening to this podcast, is already on the path of trying to, help themselves, help their brokerage, recruit better, recruit smarter. I think the data that we're putting forward in this report is game changing in terms of its impact on the industry. I don't know of any other report like this that is looking in aggregate across the United States and bringing this kind of data to the table for actionable results and to really give brokers that insight into, oh, this is deeper level. This is helping me understand not only what I'm needing, what I need to accomplish, but it's taking a look at the competition across the board. And I think that's a really unique value proposition from recruiting insight, and certainly now with Lone Wolf bringing their expertise and data. The agent migration report Q2 2026 is now available for download. I'm just going to read the address real quick. It's agentmigration.recruitinginsight.net. And also you can find all the tools and things that you would want to look for broker metrics on lwolf.com. Now before we end, I just want to kind of turn it back over to you guys. I don't know if you ever watched that program where they eat the hot wings. But at the end, when the guy barely survives it, he asks his guests, okay, what do you have coming up next? And since I went to Mark first, I'll go to Kyle as we wrap it up here. Kyle, what do you have coming up? What's next for you? What's Lone Wolf working on? What do you want to tell us about?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Matt. Obviously, AI has taken over the world. AI is something that we are really doubling down on. And because of the importance of recruiting and retaining agents and really just understanding, that's one thing, like I said, my father was a broker. I understand, and that is really one of the few things that's the same in the early 90s and late 80s that it is today. Recruiting and retaining agents is something that lives throughout. So Lone Wolf has doubled down on rebuilding and building an AI focused recruiting and retention tool. And so we're super excited. That's something that is going to come out later this summer. And so, hopefully we have Mark here to help us with that. And so, yeah, that's what Lone Wolf is focused on. Now, we're also building AI throughout the entire suite of solutions. Many brokerages that use our back office tools, again, getting that full picture of what's going on with your profitability and commission calculation, all the things that run a brokerage in the back office. We're going to have AI throughout all of our solution sets, but really focusing and starting with the with recruiting and retention side. So that's really what we're excited to be launching soon.
Awesome.
Sure.
Thank you.
Well, Matt, I would have everyone write down this. A system will produce what a system will produce, nothing less, nothing more. And if you're not happy with your recruiting and retention results, be soft on the people and hard on the system. What the partnership here does between Lone Wolf and Recruiting Insight and MyBFF is the system structure and process to make recruiting and retention, attraction, a duplicatable, repeatable, consistent process. That's what we do. We do it every day. It's all we do. And so a system will produce what a system will produce, nothing less, nothing more.
Amen to that. And with that said, I want to thank our guests. It's been my pleasure having you on. I hope we have you on again. Really strong insights from the guys here. And as always, if you need help with your social media marketing and advertising, mybffsocial.com is right there waiting to assist you. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it.
You got it.